Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into what is, without a doubt, one of the most chilling files in the entire Foundation archives. We're looking at Protocol 4000 issue. This is a highly documented Keter-class anomaly where the very words coming out of your mouth have deadly, immediate power. Let's get right into it. So, ask yourself, what if simply giving someone your name could literally cost you your humanity? Well, in the extra-dimensional space we're looking at today, the whimsical tropes of human folklore, they aren't just cute campfire stories. They are strict, unforgiving survival protocols. Listen, this isn't some fairy tale. It's an absolute butcher's block if you go in unprepared. We've got a lot to cover in this survival briefing. We're going to look at the sheer power of names, how exactly you enter this nameless forest, the incredibly strict rules of the woods, the horrifying containment breaches detailed in the logs, and finally, we'll uncover the tragic hidden history of this place. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the power of names. Now, right out of the gate, the document establishes a really fascinating rule. It defines a nomenclature of hazard of the issue class. Basically, what this means is that applying a consistent name to this dimension triggers reality bending and often fatal anomalies. It's a real game changer. Because of this, the authors of the document absolutely never use its true designation. Instead, they rely on these florid, ever-changing descriptions. You'll hear things like the forest found in chimneys or the wilderness of unnamed things. Why? Because the entities living in there steal identities like water. If you give them a consistent name, you're literally giving them a bridge straight into our world. Moving on to Section 2, entering the Nameless Forest. So, you don't just stumble into the grove beneath nameless stars. To actually access it, you have to perform a highly specific ritual called Procedure 4000 Holloway. And what's wild about this is how much it reads like ancient witchcraft. To open the path, you first have to ignite organic kindling indoors. Then, you burn a very specific mixture of powder bones, specifically from a male red fox, an adult male lion, and a baleen whale. Next, you have to sacrifice a sentimental possession right into the flames. Finally, you release 3 black corvus feathers into the smoke. Oh, and it gets crazier. The lore states that if the fire actually starts speaking to you, you have to answer with exact, rhyming counter phrases that depend entirely on whether you're your family's oldest, middle, or youngest child. If you mess up the answer, you have to apologize immediately and never ever attempt it again. But let's say you succeed. You'll arrive at the access point, a dilapidated brick well fixed right into the forest floor, which spits you out onto a single, mandatory dirt path. Now, the files describe the cartography of the land beyond the flue as entirely nonlinear. The space literally folds and shifts around you. The second you step onto that dirt path, you cannot deviate. The warnings are crystal clear here. If you step off the path, or even just turn back the way you came, contact is lost forever. Poof. The only way out is to walk the entire length of the path until you reach the exact same well at the opposite end. Which brings us to Section 3, Rules of the Woods. If you're going in, you have to follow the standard exploration protocol, and man, these rules are incredibly eccentric. You bring a standard pack, but absolutely no firearms. When you encounter an entity, you have to greet them formally, like literally bowing or curtsying based on their perceived gender. But here's the most crucial part. You must never, under any circumstances, state your name, an alias, or even a nickname. Always say please and thank you. If an entity looks threatening, you actually have to help it immediately. But if it looks attractive or completely harmless, avoid it like the plague. And remember those birth order rules? They come back here. Type 1 subjects, the eldest children have to avoid handling anything valuable. Type 2 subjects, the middle children must completely reject any displays of affection. It's absolutely rigid. This whole thing builds into a bizarre, day-to-day survival dynamic of safe versus deadly actions. For example, it's perfectly safe, and even required, to accept a physical gift with both hands. But the deadliest thing you can possibly do, the fundamental, absolute prohibition of the unnamed world, is accepting a name, title, or designation from a native entity. If they offer to name you, politely decline. If they try to call you by a title, ignore it completely. Do not engage with it. And here is why those rules matter so much. Section 4, Catastrophic Containment Breaches. The logs detail a truly horrific timeline of breaches when people failed to heed these rules. Back in 1954, Timothy Woods used a consistent name. The consequence? Fellow agents literally had their torsos elongated to the height of chimneys, with thick smoke billowing right out of their facial orifices. Timothy himself died trying to orally consume his own radio. Yeah, it's that bad. In 1955, an agent named Desk vanished directly into the pencil and paper he was writing on. Just gone. Then in 1958, an agent mistakenly used an epithet repeatedly for an entity. Hours later, he violently expelled all of his own bones. And skip ahead to 1992, Michael Ashley Vincent used a possessive name. His headless body was later found fused to an elk antler fixture in Site-08, and his face was stretched out to cover the entire floor of a building. Just incredibly gruesome stuff. And if you thought this was just a Foundation problem, think again. The document makes it abundantly clear that the danger of this arboreal dimension isn't contained just to trained personnel. Take the civilian case in 1966. A college student named Vanessa Hayforth got her hands on a book from the Wanderer's Library detailing the ritual. She triggered a breach and actually checked into an Oregon hospital complaining that her head was completely covered in flesh, even though doctors saw no unusual tissue growth. Decades after she died in custody, a photograph was taken of an entity out in the woods, and it looked exactly like a young Vanessa. This leads us to our final part. Section 5, the tragic hidden history. Over a period of several years, a Foundation researcher named Dr. Eugene Japers conducted these really careful interviews with a native entity that had this rabbit-like visage. In one log, the entity notes that its name, quote, smelt of raspberries lately, or snapdragons perhaps. This perfectly highlights the tragic decay of identity they suffer in this dimension. They just don't have stable forms or names anymore. But in response to this, Dr. Japers made a seemingly innocent, but ultimately fatal mistake. Just trying to be polite, keeping the conversation going, he casually mentioned that his own name tasted rather tart as of late. And in doing so, he gave the entity a conceptual hook. During a later interview inside the entity's thatched cottage, the logs drop a massive historical twist. The entity claimed that, a long time ago, they actually fought side by side with humanity against a mysterious factory, but humanity betrayed them. We slaughtered them, stripped them of all their names, and forced the survivors to flee into these woods where those strict rules are paramount. But as the entity finished telling this heartbreaking story, a sudden, horrifying shift occurred in the room. The fluffy entity suddenly clutched its head in sheer pain. It lost its stolen identity in an absolute panic, just stammering wildly about its missing name. And Dr. Japers? He simply stood up, coldly watched the creature suffer for a moment, and abruptly departed. As he was walking out, he muttered this bone-chilling line. It does taste rather tart. Dr. Japers did successfully return to our world after that, but he went missing shortly after, and the only thing they found on his abandoned expedition gear was some unexplained animal fur. Which leaves us with one final haunting question to wrap up this explainer. Did Dr. Japers surrender his humanity to the woods, or did he steal the identity of that rabbit entity, effectively becoming the very danger we're trying to contain? Think about that for a while. This concludes today's briefing. If you wish to maintain your current clearance level and ensure continued access to the Versarian database, a subscription to this channel is mandatory. Secure your connection by leaving a like on this file, and log your requests in the comments section below to dictate which anomaly we unseal next. Stay vigilant and expect your next set of logs every day. Secure, contain, protect.